The Minnesota Vikings let Sam Darnold walk. Now Sam Darnold is 6 days from a Super Bowl with Seattle, while Minnesota drowns in regret. Stephen A. Smith is ferocious, and he's not letting the Vikings forget this mistake.
How do you just dismiss them? How do you take them for granted like that? How do you just sit up there and say, well, we can get anybody to put in a quarterback position and, we'll be just fine? How the hell do you not have any say over Sam Darnold staying on board? You're going to get rid of a quarterback that guided you to a 14-2 record for the first 16 games of the season. So what about those 8 days? Okay, especially since you could have franchised him for one more year and see what he got. You owed that to them, and you let them down, period.
Sam Darnold, the guy the New York Jets gave up on, the quarterback who bounced around the league like a rental car, just led the Seattle Seahawks to the Super Bowl. He's 6 days away from competing for a championship. 6 days away from cementing one of the greatest redemption stories in NFL history. And the Minnesota Vikings? They're the team that made it all possible. Not because they developed him, not because they believed in him long term, but because they let him go. Stephen A. Smith isn't just disappointed. He's disgusted. And when Stephen A. gets on his soapbox about football incompetence, you better believe he's bringing the fire. So buckle up, because we're about to dissect one of the most baffling, frustrating, downright arrogant decisions in modern NFL history. This is about more than Sam Darnold. This is about respect, about competence, about understanding what you have before you throw it away. The Minnesota Vikings are about to get torched, and they absolutely deserve it.
You don't let good quarterbacks walk out the building.
Let's talk numbers first, because the numbers don't lie. Sam Darnold arrived in Minnesota on a one-year deal. Prove-it contract. Show us what you got, and maybe we'll keep you around. And what did this man do? He went out and won 14 games in the first 16 weeks of the season. 14 wins. The offense was clicking. Justin Jefferson was feasting. Jordan Addison was producing. TJ Hawkinson was a reliable safety valve. The Vikings looked like they were built for a deep playoff run. Everything was working. Then came those final 8 days. 2 devastating losses. One to the Lions, one to the Rams in the playoffs. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Sam Darnold couldn't handle the pressure. He wilted in the big moments. The Vikings had seen enough. But here's where the story goes from questionable to absolutely inexcusable. The Vikings didn't just decide not to give Darnold a long-term deal. They didn't even use the franchise tag. They had the salary cap space. They had the roster. They had every reason to bring him back for one more year to see if the success was sustainable. Instead, they let him walk. They went all in on J.J. McCarthy, a rookie who hadn't thrown a single regular season NFL pass. A kid who spent his entire first year recovering from a meniscus injury. And what happened? Exactly what anyone with half a brain could have predicted.
Over 17 games, they allowed just one more point this year than they did the previous year. Just one more point. But they scored 88 points less than they did the previous year.
Read that again. The defense allowed one additional point all season. One. But the offense collapsed by 88 points. That's not bad luck. That's not injuries derailing a season. That's what happens when you replace competent quarterback play with a complete unknown. And the biggest casualty in all of this? Justin Jefferson. This man was supposed to be on a Hall of Fame trajectory. We were comparing him to Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens. He was that good. He was generational. With Sam Darnold last season, Jefferson averaged 98 yards per game. This year, 61. He went from unstoppable to completely neutralized. But here's the stat that should haunt Vikings management forever. Justin Jefferson had 2 touchdowns all season. 2. Career lows across the board. Catches, yards per reception, touchdowns, success rate. Everything tanked. When asked about the quarterback situation, Jefferson was diplomatic. But you could hear the frustration bleeding through every word.
Everyone knows the difficulty of the quarterback position this year, of how we was dealt it. But of course, having a quarterback that's already had the season under his belt with us, knew the plays, knew the playbook, knew the players, of course, throwing to me, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, all of these guys. I definitely felt like we would have done better.
We would have done better. That's NFL speak for this was a catastrophic organizational failure. And Jefferson is absolutely right. How do you look at a receiver of his caliber and just assume the quarterback position will figure itself out? How do you disrespect your weapons like that? This is where Stephen A. Smith comes in swinging. Because this wasn't just a mistake. This was arrogance. The Vikings thought they were smarter than the results. They thought Kevin O'Connell was good enough to make any quarterback look competent. They thought they could skip the necessary steps and fast forward to the future with a rookie. They thought wrong. And here's what makes it even more inexcusable. The Vikings had two capable quarterbacks in the building last offseason. Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones. Both walked. Both went on to have productive seasons before Jones got injured. By week 4, Minnesota was trotting out Carson Wentz and Max Bromer. Carson Wentz, a guy who was borderline out of the league. That's the depth you fell to because you couldn't recognize what you had. Now let's address the Kevin O'Connell situation. The quarterback whisperer. The offensive genius who built his reputation on getting the most out of signal callers. This is the man who supposedly turned Kirk Cousins into a playoff-caliber quarterback. The man who got a career year out of Sam Darnold. And yet, when it came time to make the most important personnel decision of the offseason, Darnold walked. Now, conveniently, after the season imploded, we're hearing whispers that GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah made the call. That O'Connell wanted to keep Darnold but got overruled. That this wasn't really the coach's fault. Stephen A. Smith isn't buying it for a second.
The quarterback whisperer that had established himself as one of the bright young coaches in football, there is no way in hell he didn't have say as to Sam Darnold walking out that building. Peter, I don't believe it. I don't believe for 1 second that man, considering his cachet and what he had built in Minnesota, in guiding them to a 14-2 record, and guiding them to the playoffs, and being the quarterback whisperer, and somebody who was seen as one of the great coaches in the game today. How the hell do you not have any say over Sam Darnold staying on board as your quarterbacks?
Exactly. You're the head coach who just won 14 games. You're considered one of the brightest minds in football. You have organizational respect, credibility, influence. And we're supposed to believe you had no say in the quarterback decision? Either O'Connell made the call, or he allowed it to happen without fighting hard enough. Either way, he owns part of this disaster. You can't build your entire reputation on quarterback development and then plead ignorance when your quarterback situation falls apart. The franchise tag was sitting right there. 1 year, fully guaranteed, top 5 money at the position. If you're uncertain whether Darnold's success was real or a mirage, you use that tool. You bring him back. You let him compete with McCarthy. You see if he can replicate the magic. But no, the Vikings were too smart for that. They skipped the logical step and went straight to coronating an unproven rookie. And it blew up in their faces spectacularly.
I would not have blamed Justin Jefferson if he had asked to be traded. That's how disgusted he should have been. You can't do that to a receiver. You can't do that to pass catchers. You're going to get rid of a quarterback that you know guided you to a 14-2 record for the first 16 games of the season.
Think about what Stephen A. is saying here. Justin Jefferson, the face of your franchise, should have been angry enough to demand out. That's how badly the Vikings disrespected their own star player. You can't strip away the quarterback who unlocked his greatness and expect him to just smile and accept it. This isn't the Jets situation all over again. Jamal Adams, who played with Darnold in New York, had some reflections on patience.
Who played with Darnold in New York said, man, if only New York had some patience with him. Remember, Adams was dealt to the Seahawks before the 2020 season. He said, he was the guy. Gonna be the guy. He just needed some time.
The Jets were dysfunctional top to bottom. Multiple regime changes, no offensive weapons, organizational chaos. That's a systemic failure. Darnold played 36 games there and never had a fair shot. But Minnesota? They had everything in place. Elite receiver, solid offensive line, talented defense, proven coaching. All they needed was quarterback stability, and they threw it away for nothing. That's why this is worse than what the Jets did. The Vikings had success in their hands and torched it because they got arrogant. They assumed they could manufacture results with an inexperienced player. They took their weapons for granted. So here we are, 6 days from the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold is preparing for the biggest game of his life with the Seattle Seahawks. He's proven the doubters wrong. He's shown that with the right system, the right support, the right belief, he can be a winning quarterback in this league. And the Vikings? Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is out as GM. The team is searching for answers. J.J. McCarthy is still unproven. Justin Jefferson's prime years are being wasted. The window is slamming shut. This wasn't just a mistake. This was organizational malpractice. This was arrogance disguised as forward thinking. This was a front office that thought it was smarter than the scoreboard.
And you let them down. Period.
Period. End of discussion. The Vikings owed it to Justin Jefferson to maintain quarterback stability. They owed it to their fan base to not blow up a 14-win team. They owed it to themselves to at least try to run it back with the guy who just delivered their best season in years. They failed on every level. This is the story the NFL will remember. Not just that Sam Darnold succeeded in Seattle, but that Minnesota had him and let him walk. They had the answer to their biggest question and tossed it aside because they got too cute, too clever, too convinced of their own brilliance. The franchise tag existed for exactly this scenario. 1 year, guaranteed money, prove it again. That's all they needed to do. But the Vikings thought they were above that. They thought they could skip steps. They thought Kevin O'Connell's genius could overcome inexperience. They were wrong. And now Sam Darnold gets to play in a Super Bowl while the Vikings conduct a post-mortem on a season that should have been a championship run. That's not just bad luck. That's the consequences of arrogance. Stephen A. Smith is making sure this mistake echoes through NFL front offices for years to come. Don't let good quarterbacks walk out the building. Don't disrespect your star players. Don't assume you're smarter than the results staring you in the face. The Minnesota Vikings learned this lesson the hard way. And 6 days from now, when Sam Darnold takes the field in the Super Bowl, they'll be watching from home, drowning in regret, knowing they had their chance and threw it away. This is what organizational failure looks like. And the Vikings just wrote the textbook on it.